The Miami Heat suffered an embarrassing loss on Tuesday evening on the road against the Milwaukee Bucks. And it's simply put, a loss that cannot happen. But what it did do is tell us something about the backcourt in Miami that I think most of us knew, but last night was the hit you in the face type of evidence where you can't ignore it anymore. But before we get into that, this loss is just so frustrating on so many different reasons. It's a team in Milwaukee that is significantly under 500. It's missing Giannis Antetokounmpo. And when this front office doesn't make a deal at the trade deadline, they don't get Giannis. They don't make another move. They say, oh, we can be competitive. We can make noise in the East if we make the playoffs. But then lose to the Bucks. It just is so frustrating. And it tells us that this Heat team is exactly who we thought they were. They are a 500 basketball team that on any given night can beat anyone for one game or lose to anyone. They've beaten the Pistons this year. They've beaten the Thunder, the two best teams in the NBA. But over the last 2 weeks, they've also lost to the Utah Jazz, who sat their starters for the final 15 minutes, and then the Milwaukee Bucks on the road. These losses can't happen, especially when you continue to sell your fan base on the idea of making noise in the postseason. And you're in the middle of a race to get the final spot in the playoffs and avoid the play-in, a play-in tournament that you've been in each of the last 3 seasons. You have to win to keep pace with Orlando, keep pace with Philadelphia. And you were unable to do that against a team that you were 6.5-point favorites against on the road. Which means if you were playing that game at home, Vegas probably would have had you favored by 9-10 points. It's so bad. But like I mentioned off the top, it did tell us that this Heat team has a major problem that I think we all knew was there. But yesterday was like a slap in the face. You cannot ignore it anymore. And the issue is the backcourt of Tyler Herro and Norman Powell. Now, the two aren't starting, but these two were sold by the front office before the year started as one of the more dynamic duos in the NBA in the backcourt offensively. And it's not like I'm trying to rewrite history here. I loved the Norman Powell trade in the offseason. I said it a million different times. But I also said I would bring one of Tyler Herro or Norman Powell off the bench because I didn't think these two could coexist in the starting lineup. But it was insisted that they could prior to Herro's injuries that kept them out for all of basically this season. But the two can't play together. That's the issue. Now, there are reasons why they can't play together. And it's basically reasons number 2 and reason number 3. Both of them can play no defense. And sometimes it's not for a lack of effort. It's not as if they are openly not trying defensively. It is just the fact they are incapable of playing good defense because of physical limitations and mental IQ as well. But they also have extremely poor shot selection. So when they are on the floor together, the ball sticks a little bit. There's less movement. And there's less of this shared basketball that Miami has played with offensively for most of this season. And we're going to get into these reasons here in a second with numbers to back it up. But follow me over on Twitter /X at Nick_Roloff. We're 145 followers away from 3,000, but I'm just trying to get 45 today to get to 2,900. I live tweet Miami Heat games, and we talked about some of the highlights and statistics about these two not working together on Twitter before making this video, so go give me a follow. But I do want to showcase some still photos. And I know still photos don't tell the whole story, but this is what I'm talking about, the poor shot selection at times. Herro in the first quarter drives to the paint, gets 2 feet inside, good job, loses the ball, picks up the ball. And when he picks up the basketball, look at where he's at. He has all 5 Bucks defenders collapsed inside with eyes on him. One guy's on the floor, Kuzma's staring at him, Jang is staring at him, Porter's staring at him, and so is Jericho Sims. So what do you think Herro should do here? Well, he's making eye contact with Jaquez, kick it out to the open 3-point shooter. And then Jaquez can take a 3, or in all likelihood, Jang rotates to Jaime, bounce pass to the corner for Jakucionis, who's a 40% three-point shooter, and you get a good look there. What does Herro do? Oh no, he's going to turn around and take a contested mid-range 8-footer that he evidently misses. That's poor shot selection and selfish basketball. Then we transfer over to the third quarter. This is at the end of the third quarter, final possession. Herro gets the isolation. He gets double-teamed, crossover. What happens? Herro is quite literally side-eyeing Kel'el Ware, who made a couple threes in this game, shoots 40% from three, wide open, butt naked in the corner. If you see right here, I don't know if you can tell, there's about 3.5 seconds left, which gives Herro ample enough time to rise, kick to the corner for an open three at the end of the quarter. What happened? Herro takes a contested 20-foot step back and misses. No good look. That is selfish basketball. These two plays, and I know it's not every single possession, they are just microcosms of the issue at hand that both Herro and Norman Powell have such a scoring shooter's mentality that they can become selfish and have poor shot selection at times. And you look at Norman Powell, like he is not obsolete from these talks as well. For example, in a game, in a part of this last night, Norman Powell, with 17 seconds left on the shot clock, drives baseline. What does he do? He has Kyle Kuzma riding him on his hip in a relatively good shot blocker, Miles Turner, helping weak side to contest the shot. Now, what happens is Powell throws up a bank shot floater. He airballs it, and because he airballs it, it bounces off the backboard right back to him. He lays it up and in. So he scored on this play, but it's a bad process. Why? Because look at, once again, all 5 Milwaukee Bucks defenders. All of them are basically in the paint, ball watching, which is not good defense. They're ball watching. So what Powell can do right here is take a little sidestep or elevate and kick to the wide open Andrew Wiggins for 3. And he'll have an open look, or if the defense rotates, he can switch and move it one more time, top of the key, Davion Mitchell 3. I know it worked out and ended up being a bucket. That is bad, selfish basketball. And I want to go back to a play that was a highlight reel on Saturday night against the Grizzlies. This play was where he went up and under, made a crazy layup. Twitter went wild, like, oh my God, how did Norman Powell finish that? That's so impressive. I tweeted out, bad shot. Should have kicked it out. People said that that was a little bit of a hater mentality, said that I was being a little critical, calling Norman Powell a selfish player, which I did tweet out. But look, Norman Powell gets by. He does a great job at attacking an aggressive closeout. But once again, look at the Grizzlies defenders here. You've got 2 people behind him, and the other 3 are in the paint, rotating over to him and making sure he can't score. It's why he did a contested, crazy reverse layup on 2 people. But if he right now makes the smart play of either skip passing into the corner for Andrew Wiggins, wide open 3, or quick pitch to the top of the key for the wide open Kasparas Jakucionis. Look, I know on these last 2 plays, Norman Powell ended up scoring. It is a bad process in selfish basketball because it is unlikely these 2 plays result in good fortune for you if you do that 10 times. Out of 10 times, you probably score 3 of those times. You kick it out for an open 3, that number goes astronomically up. Like, the selfishness drives me up a wall. And then you look at some of the numbers that the 2 have played together, and it isn't good. Last night against Milwaukee, a bad defensive team, the Heat did not make a shot for the final 6.5 minutes. It is not all on Herro and Norman Powell because Herro actually was out for 3 of those minutes. He subbed back in with 2:55. But the offensive movement and the unselfish basketball that Miami's been accustomed to at times this season goes away with both Herro and Powell on the floor. And I think it was evident in the final 3 minutes of last night's game. Now, I don't think Herro and Powell can play together. I've had this concern for a long time. But do you agree or do you disagree? Pin comment on today's show. Can Tyler Herro and Norman Powell play together long term? I obviously think not. I know it's just one game and it's only 8 minutes played. But last night's 8 minutes of shared basketball for Tyler Herro, Norman Powell, were some of the worst basketball I've ever watched. I mean, the advanced numbers tell you it's one of the worst games and duos maybe in the history of the NBA. And the just raw, hey, were you good or bad with them on the floor together? You were outscored by 17 points in those 8 minutes shared between Norman Powell and Tyler Herro. That's unacceptable and eye-opening. Really, it really is. And a lot of it was in that final 3.5 minutes because that closing lineup can't happen. What was the closing lineup last night if you didn't watch? Well, it was Tyler Herro, Norman Powell, Davion Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, and Andrew Wiggins. In those 3.5 minutes, by the way, it was the only minutes that they basically shared last night, they got outscored by 11. And you see the advanced numbers here. True shooting percentage was 20. Like, that lineup doesn't work because you have 3 undersized guards. And you're undersized as a whole. You have Davion Mitchell barely cracking 6 feet. Tyler Herro is 6'5", but he plays undersized because he's short wingspan and is not a physical player. Norman Powell is 6'3". You have Andrew Wiggins at 6'7", playing the 4, and you have an undersized center already at Bam Adebayo, 6'9", playing center. So you're undersized, which limits your rebounding, limits your defense because you have 2 horrible defenders on the floor. And it's clunky offensively because the ball isn't as moving as you'd like with Norman Powell and Tyler Herro sharing the floor. It just can't work. I'm sorry, it can't, and I really can't be told otherwise at this point. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every dunk, every rebound, every assist means more on PrizePicks as the playoff push is officially underway. And you can get $50 in lineups on PrizePicks when you play your first $5. Just use code CLNS. Just pick more or less on at least 2 to 6 player stat projections. You can combine sports, whether it's basketball and baseball, basketball and hockey, golf and hockey. You can customize the way you play. PrizePicks also offers stacks, so you could put the same player in your lineup up to 3 times. PrizePicks is one of the only places that lets you do that. I have an entry for season long in baseball. More on Juan Soto home runs. Less on Paul Skeens' 2.65 ERA. And more on Roman Anthony 20.5 home runs. That's my 3-player entry for this upcoming baseball season. Join me and the millions of others on PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. And sure, you can make the argument that it has been a small sample size for Tyler Herro and Norman Powell. I would actually agree with you for the most part because there has just been so many games with them two not in there. But we have now seen them on the floor together for 158 minutes. And in those 158 minutes, which would equate to about 3.5 games if both of them played 48 minutes, it's been a average to negative duo. Exactly -1 net rating. So, it's even though last night, I know it was very limited sample size, only 8 minutes, we've seen 158 minutes of bad basketball between those two. And the Heat getting outscored. To me, you just have to separate their minutes. There is really no justification for those two sharing time on the basketball court. I think you have to choose one at a specific time. And it goes back to the same point that I made in the past as well. They do the same thing. They're both two guards who have a shot-first mentality that don't play any defense. How are you going to have two of them on the floor at the same time? You can't. So part of this now goes to Erik Spoelstra, to where you, Coach Spo, have to realize that these two can't play together and not play them together and stagger their minutes. Have to do it. Make sure you subscribe. This is why, because we have Heat breakdowns, news, rumors, and watch parties. Will be live on Thursday night for Heat 76ers. Join the family here at the Heat Report by Chat Sports. And it's not like I'm the only one thinking this. Ethan Skolnick, 5 Region Sports Network, other people on Heat Twitter. I can make a laundry list of names that believe this as well. This is just one of the more high-profile ones I wanted to share. He even said you can't close with Powell and Herro defensively against quick-scoring guards, which the Milwaukee Bucks had in Kevin Porter Jr., cooked you for 30, in Ryan Rollins, who was cooking you in the first half. Spo needs to pick one each night. Like, it just couldn't be more obvious, and I think most of you are realizing it as well, but for the people that had a hard time coming to that realization, I hope the points that I made on today's episode brought you over to our side. But it also is the same exact reason why I have consistently said I would not re-sign Norman Powell in the offseason or extend him right now. One, because he's 33 years old and going to want a lot of money, but you can't have him and Herro together. So maybe, just maybe, you can convince me if you traded Tyler Herro this offseason. Because Herro's under contract next year. Norman Powell is not. So if you trade Herro and re-sign Norman Powell, all right, maybe I can get behind that, depending on other moves Miami makes in free agency or on the trade market to try to upgrade this team. But in a vacuum right now, knowing who is on the Heat roster next season, how could you justify giving Norman Powell a 4-year, $128.5 million extension? Now, that is his max extension he could get this offseason. Will he get that from a team? I don't know. But this is potentially what he's going to ask for coming off of his first career All-Star appearance, which is $31.1 million per season. And it's hard not to, if you're Norman Powell, ask for that because you just did make your first All-Star team and you already are paying a player similar to Norman Powell, Tyler Herro, $33 million next season. So looking at this, and you could add Myron Gardner to this as well, who was signed last week to a 3-year deal worth about $9 million. If you re-sign Norman Powell, you're running it back. Nothing changes. The only thing that changes is that you no longer have Simone Fontecchio on your team. Like, no world Miami can run this same roster back with Norman Powell, Tyler Herro, Bam, Andrew Wiggins. It's just incredibly difficult to sell your fan base on that. Like, one of Norman Powell and Tyler Herro can't be on the roster next season. I would advocate for both of them being gone and just completely reset, completely rebuild, start Jakucionis, Kel'el Larson together next season, Bam and Ware, and figure out who is that fifth starter. Like, that is how I would probably progress in the offseason if you are not able to acquire an All-NBA or All-Star level guy. That will do it for today's show. Make sure you follow me over on Twitter/X at Nick_Roloff for more Heat content. I'll see you over there. First 5 people to give me a follow on today's show, get a follow back.